Suli greetings to everyone. I am Nonita Patalinghog, a graduate of St. Joseph Institute of Technology, Butuan City, presenting here my study titled Ingeniously Complying, the Behavior of Teachers in Using Strategic Intervention Materials for the SIM in Elementary Science. In a discussion paper of the Analysis of the Policy K-12 Education Program, it says that the poor quality of basic education is reflected in the low achievement scores of Filipino students. Many students who finish basic education do not possess sufficient mastery of basic competencies. One intervention to answer the problem, which is fast developing in the country, is the strategic intervention material. David of 2007 noted that a teacher is likely to have 3 to 5 students who are slow learners. Jackson 2012 stressed that intervention materials improve the learning experiences of the pupils and emphasize on what the child can do, and at the same time give the opportunity for growth and development. Helping students who are struggling in the class requires teachers to choose an appropriate time and strategy for the intervention. The research is concerned on what is going on when teachers use the strategic intervention material. It used the classical Barney G. Glasser's grounded theory GT methodological approach to generate a theory grounded on data on teachers' main concern and how they are trying to resolve such concern, which describes the preponderant behavior. The researcher had to set theoretical ideas aside to allow a substantive theory to emerge. This means that the researcher did not look at existing literature, since based on initial research, it was discovered that there was no attempt so far to generate theory on using the SIM. It was finally decided that the study used Glasserian grounded theory as its methodological model. The study has no pre-established framework, giving the researcher the chance to discover data and to generate her own theoretical framework. Data collection and analysis were done first, then the identification of the more theoretically focused research questions, the selection of theoretically related literatures followed. After the core behavior emerged and was discovered, and then the final title of the study was framed. All this occurring cyclically and inductively guided at all times by the data. The interviews were done exclusively in person, face-to-face, since this is an exploratory study on the pattern of experiences of teachers using SIM. The experiences of the participants will emerge freely that is relevant, that fits, and that works. The diagram describes the flow of the research procedures. The analysis followed an iterative manner where it will start with initial analysis of coding, synthesizing, creating of categories, identification of themes, and cyclical before sorting was done to put into pieces the emergent themes to create a whole picture of the experience. Thus, the study was organized in a manner reflecting the flow of the grounded theory work. The participants of the study were elementary school science teachers known to use SIM. Groups were chosen as needed based on theoretical significance for the purpose of allowing categories to emerge from the data. Determining sample size in qualitative research does not follow one rule. Sample size depends on what the researcher desires to learn, the purpose of the study, useful data choices, trustworthiness of data, money available, and scheduled time constraints. The research participants contributed appropriate data both in terms of relevance and depth. Therefore, a sample size of 13 teachers was used as a baseline and theoretical saturation was employed to determine the final sample size. The sample size increased to 21 as the study progressed and was ultimately finalized during the analysis phase. All interviews were recorded on a digital voice recorder and some were videotaped. Though classical grounded theory would not suggest, but for convenience, recording of the interview date was made. As interviews were completed, transcriptions were performed in order to appropriately prepare for the next GT step. To facilitate this process, codes and their corresponding quotations were reviewed for similarities and relationships to create code families. Data enters the research in many ways. When saturation is reached, the researcher leaves the field. Based on the generated categories, the researcher is pointed towards specific bodies of knowledge within the literature. At the conclusion of this sequence, a theory is generated. Here are the discussions of the different problems presented. Problem number 1. What is the process of using strategic intervention material as experienced by the teachers? The study discovered that using of the strategic intervention materials followed a cyclical pattern. It started with initial making, followed by its use of application, monitoring and observation, remaking or modification, and the process is a self-determining process, where teachers are allowed wide opportunity to maneuver in the whole making and using, remaking, and reusing of the same. In a schematic diagram, the factors that define the strategic intervention material are presented in illustration number 2. The illustration number 2 shows the factors defining the scene. The illustration suggests that the form and nature of the scene that a teacher will produce is dependent on the inherent and external factors. Theoretically speaking, teachers who are formally oriented on the scene tend to create a scene that is more based on the inherent form and the nature of a scene according to the mandate of the DepEd, as well as the demands and requirements of the institution where the teacher belongs. Illustration 3 presents the factors affecting the use of the scene. For problem number 2, what is the main problem that the teacher experienced in using strategic intervention material? Teachers are faltering and fluctuating in the use of the scene. This is the main problem that confronts the teacher in the use of the scene. How do the teachers try to resolve the problem which explains their pattern of behavior as they use SIM? To resolve the problem of fluctuating and faltering use of the SIM, the baseline problems must first be resolved as a subsidiary to the resolution of the consequential and systematic problems. Retroactively, the problem of fluctuating use of SIM may be resolved by resolving the problem of faltering, uncertainty, and discomfort. In the conclusion, the study discovered a theory without preconceiving or predetermining through the use of extant literatures, self-knowledge, and biases, or hypothesizing the result before data were gathering. The study discovered that teachers using the SIM are compliant of the mandate of the Department of Education to employ intervention materials for pupils in science subjects to easily understand and learn more about the subject. However, because of the different hindrances and challenges that confronted the teachers in the use of SIM, they innovated, created, and applied ingenious ways just to use the SIM because they thought that the SIM is useful and advantageous to the pupils and to them. Thus, ingeniously complying was the preponderant behavior of the teachers in using SIM. This defined the behavior of the teachers when they used SIM. How about my personal journey in this study? This study taught me to understand the plight of the teachers who, upon reflecting their experiences, made me believe that a variety of attributes to be possessed by the researcher are to be considered, such as flexibility and inquisitiveness, and appreciative of the participants' involvement and efforts. The use of the grounded theory methodology was for me so challenging since it is not commonly used by the researchers. However, it taught me to be patient and be humble and respect the participants because they so trust me to capture their inner feelings. Also, I could obtain more holistic picture about the issues, which is important training to being a researcher. This has been Nonita Patalingo. Thank you very much, fellow presenters, panelists, and the organizers of this event.